What year did you go with Miles Davis?
63.
And you were with him for quite a long time.
5.5 years.
What led up to your joining Miles's group?
Miles disbanded his former group with Wynton Kelly and Paul Chambers and the other guys, and he was looking for a band, and he hired certain people, and he hadn't gotten around to hiring a piano player. So I got wind of it. You know, the grapevine is pretty fast in New York, and somebody told me that Miles would probably call me, but I didn't believe him. You know, I said, "Oh man, you're crazy." So anyway, it turned out that Miles did ask a lot of people who he should get, and a lot of people said that he should get me. And he called me one day and said, "You working with anybody?" So I said, "No." You know, I was working with Donald Byrd, but I told him no. You know, he said, "Can you come over to my house tomorrow at 1:30?" I said, "Yeah, sure." Meanwhile, he didn't tell me what his name. I mean, that was like openers. He didn't tell me what his name was. He didn't tell me where he lived, his phone number, or anything. You know. So he said, "Okay, come over to my house at 1:30 tomorrow." Click. You know, and you know, just hung right up. So I said, "Oh wow, what am I gonna do?" You know. Well, half an hour later, Tony Williams called me and said, "Hey, did Miles call you?" So I told him, "Yeah." He said, "Well, anyway, Tony gave me his address, and I went over to his house, and for 3 days, Tony Williams, George Coleman, Ron Carter, and myself, the four of us, played down in the basement of Miles's apartment. Miles came down about twice each day, and he'd play 1 or 2 notes and then throw his horn out on the couch and run back upstairs. You know? But I couldn't figure. I thought I was being auditioned for all these 3 days, and on the last day he came down and said, "We have to be at Columbia Studios tomorrow at 2:30." So I said, "What?" You know, and I said, "Well, Miles, I mean, am I in the group? You haven't even said anything. Am I in the group or what?" He said, "You're doing the record date, aren't you?" You know. So in other words, like, it was stupid of me to ask whether I was in the group. I wouldn't be recording with him if I wasn't. You know. So I was up on cloud 9 at that time.
How did you find the experience of working with Miles Davis over a period of 5.5 years?
Oh, it was completely rewarding, you know, musically, and I learned so many things about things that I wasn't even conscious of, you know, how to lead a band, you know, how to get the best out of the musicians you're working with, and how to construct tunes so that they'll be interesting not only to the musicians but also to people listening to them.
Is this a problem with jazz musicians sometimes, where they become inbred to the point that they're playing more for themselves than for an audience? That's been said a lot.
That has happened, but the best of jazz musicians play for the audience. You know, they play through themselves for the audience.
Something happened 3 or 4 years ago in popular music, where suddenly the blues and blues singers who had been very obscure for years and years and years suddenly became heroes and suddenly became large influences on the rock and roll scene. Do you think something is going to happen someday that would take people like Sonny Stitt and Gene Ammons or Donald Byrd or whatever, people who are very well known in jazz circles? Is it possible that something may happen that will make these people influential in a larger sphere of music, so that they will become more household names?
Perhaps. I'm just thinking about the particular individuals that you named.
Those were just kind of names off the
Yeah.
top of my head.
Well, I think what's going to happen in the immediate future is that jazz is going to be discovered. You know, it's kind of a ridiculous statement, but I think jazz is going to reach a level where it becomes popular.
You think jazz has ever reached that level before?
Yeah, sure. Oh, yeah. Back in the 30s. That was the only music that there was. And that was, I suppose, the only time. When Charlie Parker came around in the say the middle 40s, jazz had a certain kind of popularity. It was the rebel music of that day, the anti-establishment music. And everybody who really considered himself hip, would dug jazz. You know, I don't really know if they really dug jazz. It was more like a
More of being on the scene at times.
yeah, it was like I've heard some old records. It was almost like a real showmanship kind of thing. I've heard some old records of jazz performers just doing things just to be crazy, you know, like Dizzy Gillespie's whole scene. I mean, he's really a nut, you know, and Maynard Ferguson used to be really crazy, and Monk has his peculiarities. I think that started out just to get himself over, you know, and now he's that is part of his personality.
How did you go about forming your own group when you left Miles Davis? Like, how did you go through the same selection that Miles Davis had gone through and where he selected you? Suddenly the hat was, what is the expression, the shoe was on the other foot, or the hat
right.
was on the other head.
Right. Well, when I did my album Speak Like a Child, the instrumentation appealed to me so much that I decided right away that was exactly the kind of group I wanted to have. You know, I had, with that kind of instrumentation, would have a lot of flexibility. You know, it's still a small group.
And what was the instrumentalization?
Flugelhorn, alto flute, and bass trombone, piano, bass, and drums.
The personnel in your group has changed a couple of times, so hasn't it? Who are you working with now?
Right now, I've got, well, let me answer your question first. The reason I selected the people, the first people that I had in my band, they happened to be available, number one. And fortunately, I had a good reputation with the musicians, and so the guys that I wanted to have in the band that were available were very happy to be working with me. But in the group now, I have Billy Hart playing drums and Buster Williams on bass, Julian Priester playing alto trombone, tenor trombone, and bass trombone, and Eddie Henderson playing trumpet and flugelhorn, and Benny Maupin on alto flute, tenor saxophone, and bass clarinet. When this particular band got together, which was in September, the only guy from the previous group that I had is Buster Williams, but the band in its present form started in September, and during the first week or two, when we worked at the Both Ann in San Francisco, and we worked at the Old Cellar in Vancouver, I knew that this was really the band I had been looking for. Without even knowing what kind of band I was looking for, once it happened, I said, this is it, this is the one. And the funny thing was that as soloists, at that time, I was not, as individual soloists, at that time I was not particularly, I wasn't more impressed by the soloists in this band than with the other one. But there was a group feeling that this band had, and a way of combining our energies and projecting that energy to the audience that wasn't really present with the previous band that I had. There's more of a oneness with this band, and it just turned out that so many things would happen musically with this band that were completely not only spontaneous but unpremeditated. You know, things that would just happen with all the members of the group, and it happens more and more, and it kept happening more and more until it has almost a certain kind of consistency, things that are beyond our control.
You've been listening to a conversation with Warner Brothers recording artist Herbie Hancock. His most recent album is entitled Mwandishi. The conversation was recorded in May of 1971 at radio station KPBC in Los Angeles. The other voice is KPBC disc jockey and program director Les Carter.